Good. I screwed. Okay, we're good?
Yep.
All right. Good afternoon, Orange County. This is your county executive, Steve Newhouse. We have a very special thing that we're doing today. I have Dr. Wanda McQueen, who is our Director of Early Intervention Services for the Department of Health. Wanda, welcome to you.
Thank you.
And I have Commissioner Darcy Miller, who is our Commissioner in charge of Mental Health and Social Services for Orange County. Darcy, welcome.
Thank you.
We were muted before, but I was giving you accolades because you have really enlightened me and a lot of the county legislators and the public on different things throughout the day. So we have a special topic today. We're going to be talking about a bunch of things. I'm going to read it. We're talking about special education and its impact on early intervention, preschool special education, and special education for school-age children. A lot of questions out there for parents, for providers, educators, because we're in a very difficult situation now with COVID and how we're able to provide services to these young men and women and anybody that needs that type of treatment. So how about we start with introductions? Doctor, we'll start with you, and then we'll go with you, Darcy, and then we'll start taking questions. So if you have questions, folks, start posting them underneath this on Facebook. This will be recorded for people to watch later on that couldn't log on live now. So with that, Dr. McQueen, you want to give some opening statements on this?
I think the most important thing is to differentiate between the three different services we're talking about today and the county's role in each one. So that might take just a couple of minutes, so bear with me. In regards to special education services in general, they're available to eligible students ages 3 through 21 whose disability impacts their ability to learn. Special education services typically are provided in an educational setting. They're overseen by the New York State Education Department, and they're determined by the school district and their IEP or CSE, CPSE teams, and I'll explain a little bit more about those a little bit later. They include school age 5 through 21 and also preschool special education services ages 3 through 5. When we're talking about special education for school age services, that's ages 5 through 21. Again, this is operated by the school district's Committee on Special Education, or CSE. You'll hear a lot of acronyms today. Special education services, they're included on a student's individualized IEP or individualized education plan. The county has no role in the school age special education services for students. So that's ages 5 through 21. When we're talking about preschool special education services, that's ages 3 through 5. The county is a member of the CPSE, or Committee on Preschool Special Education team. The services are still overseen by the school district, not by the county. It is the CPSE at the school district that determines which services are appropriate for eligible students. And the role of the county is simply to act as a fiscal agent. That means we pay for services listed on an IEP for preschool special education students. We contract with providers to offer those preschool special education services within Orange County, and we ensure that the transportation is at no cost to the families. That could look as mileage reimbursement or reimbursement of public transportation for parents that transport their own children, or it can look like bus transportation or county provided and arranged transportation, and we offer both of those. So that's special education and the differences between that. When we're talking about early intervention program services, these are our 0 to 3 population. They have a significant developmental disability. These services typically take place at home with the family. It's considered a family training or more of a consultant model of services whereby the therapists actually go into the homes with the families, and then they strengthen a family's ability to provide strategies and techniques to their own children to maximize the child's development or reach developmental milestones. It's overseen by the New York State Department of Health, which is different than special education services, and they're determined by the Individualized Family Service Plan, again, another acronym, IFSP, and that team develops strategies and services around the goals that are set by the family, not by the county. The intervention services are then included on the child's IFSP or their plan, and the role of the county for early intervention services for 0 to 3. We operate the early intervention program. We oversee services provided to eligible children residing inside of Orange County, and we pay for the services that are listed on a child's IFSP. So I think it's really important to differentiate as we get started today that there's three distinct services that we're talking about here. And that's my intro.
And doctor, are we missing a lot of guidance? We're going to get into Darcy in a minute. Are we missing? There's a lot of guidance that hasn't come down from Albany, and I know this is complicated stuff that we're talking about, and we're dealing with people's lives. But what I'm hearing from parents is that there's a lot of people left hanging, and how can we help those people? So I mean, I can go to Darcy with your comments, and then maybe we'll go into how we address those things in this new times that we're in. So Darcy?
Sure. I just want to say thank you, County Executive. You know, you have your thumb on the pulse of the needs of our community, whether it's stopping on the side of the road to save a life, which you have done, or answering the questions of the people regarding special needs. And thank you for that, because we're getting calls, you're getting messages. Dr. McQueen, such a pleasure to be here with you today, because I know that while our health department has been dealing with COVID, and that's been on the front, you've been in the back burner still doing all of this work trying to support families out there. And that's what we're about. You know, we're about working together to support families. We know that they're struggling because they're 24/7 at home with their children. They're not able to do face-to-face and have some of the therapies face-to-face, have the social emotional needs met face-to-face. And we're empathizing with our families and trying to help them understand what role we have in the county. As the Department of Mental Health, I have a responsibility of oversight of OPWDD services in our county for 5 and beyond. And we take that very seriously. We work with many agencies. As you know, we have so many non-for-profits in this community that we couldn't do our work in county government without. They also are missing their kids, they're missing their families because they're not face-to-face with them, and they're trying as hard as they can to catch up with technology, do things virtual, you know, have tactile experiences, even trying to get groups set up where they can send families off into teams together to do some group so they have a face-to-face with their children that they serve. So again, thank you for taking the time to do this. I think it's important to our community, and you're always making sure that you are on the forefront of what we need to be doing.
So when I left the government center, now we're at the 911 center, one of our employees said, thank you for the updates that we do every day. But she said, look, I have a child that is on the autism spectrum. And she said, she held up her phone. She said, this is how he communicates twice a week with his provider, and it's not working. So what can we do? And some of the programs we don't run, some of them we kind of are involved in, and I know Wanda walked us through this a little bit. What can we do to help them? What is the prognosis going forward? The state announced a week and a half ago guidance was coming. A lot of it hasn't come. So where do they stand now? How do they get through, in your recommendations, and survive through these tough times?
Well, I think it's important to note that on June 5th, the governor issued an executive order that permitted special education services, so that's only ages 3 through 21. If you remember when I did the overview at the beginning, and a lot of parents were getting calls from don't understand the difference. But for special education, it's just ages 3 through 21.
Yeah.
And the governor issued an executive order on June 5th that said summer special education services may resume for the summer term. However, he didn't give any guidance regarding how that would be supported. He just made that statement. Of course, if you're a parent sitting at home, and I was one, with a special education child, you're going, oh, thank God, we're going to open up. Or you might be, oh no, with COVID-19, I don't want to resume in-person services. You know, and we have a mixed bag right now going on between how parents perceive this executive order. But that is not what in-person services resuming for all special education students this summer was not decided in that executive order on June 5th. Luckily, the New York State Department of Health worked collaboratively with the New York State Department of Education, and on June 8th, so on Friday, we get the executive order saying special education services may resume for the summer term, which in the special education world is considered ESY or extended school year services. Not all special education students would be eligible to receive those. But for those that have ESY services on their IEPs, there would be the potential to resume in-person services. Distance learning continues to be in place for all children where it's appropriate to do so, and will continue throughout the summer regardless of the executive order on June
So,
5th.
so they're guaranteed virtual, and they may, depending on school districts, or
Depending-
depending on what?
Depending on a couple of things, and that's what was so great about the New York State Department of Health working collaboratively with New York State Department of Education. So on Friday, and I think it got released in
This
the evening on
past Friday.
No, on June 5th,
This June
the
5th,
executive
okay.
order from the governor came out. On Monday, June 8th, we got an interim advisory out through the New York State Department of Health that gave much more clarity to what the executive order really meant. Because on Friday evening, even we were wondering, is early intervention, that those 0 to 3 services,
Yeah.
are they included? And we didn't even know. So we were racing all weekend trying to get the answers, talking and trying to get a hold of NYSED and New York State Department of Health, those places. And then on June 8th, thankfully, the Department of Health released the interim advisory that clearly indicated that only special education services ages 3 through 21 were included as part of the executive order by the governor on June 5th. So we knew that. So we've known that since June 5th and June 8th. They included in that June 8th guidance some very clear methods or procedures that had to be followed before in-person services could resume for a special education student. And the two main takeaways from that is, number one, the executive orders say in-person services may take place over the summer. Didn't say they had to. No one's required to offer them because we are still in a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So safety has to be the first thing we worry about, the health and safety of our community. Of course, we want to get our students and our children back into intervention services and special education as quickly as possible, but we want to do it as safely as possible as well, and that's all the way up to the state level. And then the first thing in the June 8th executive or the advisory that was very important is a district may request in-person services, because for some students that are at high risk, it wouldn't be appropriate for a district to recommend in-person services resume for them right now during the pandemic. So it really became, at that point on June 8th, a district decision whether or not they felt that for an individual special education student, it would be appropriate to continue either distance learning throughout the summer or request in-person services. And I'm not saying offer, I'm saying request them. So that's the first very important piece that came out on June 8th. The second piece that would have to be in place before it could even be considered or in-person could start for special education students is if a district decides that little Johnny would benefit from in-person services and wanted those to resume, then they request that service from a provider. Typically for an existing special education student, that is going to be the provider that's currently offering that service. Could be speech, could be OT, it could be a special education classroom or center-based program, as we call them, on the preschool level. So if the district thinks little Johnny would benefit for in-person services, they then request from a preschool provider, and I'm talking preschool. School age could do the same, but we don't operate schools, so I'm not school age, so I'm not talking about that one specifically today. They'd have to reach out to your school district for those school age related questions and clarifications.
And the school could say, look, we can guarantee you virtual. We have the option to do the in-person. We don't feel we can do it yet.
If they don't feel, in speaking with the New York State Department of Education and the New York State Department of Health over the past couple of weeks since these documents were issued, if a provider or a district do not feel that they can protect the safeguards and ensure that all safeguards are followed, it's very unlikely that they are going to be recommending in-person services for a student or for maybe all their students in the case of a certain provider or providing agency or a school district. But that's their decision. You have to have both pieces in place. Now, if the district requests special education services from a provider, June 8th is very clear. The provider has the option to resume in-person services. It could be that provider is at higher risk and it's not safe to resume in-person services for the summer term. It could be that they can't guarantee the safeguards, the required safeguards are in place. So they're unable to offer in-person services. So without those two critical components, in-person services won't be able to take place for some special education students this summer. And those are big questions. They're big. It's not something I heard from a lot of parents that would like in-person services on the preschool level, saying, Wanda, these should have been able to start the week after June 5th, when the governor issued the executive order. They don't understand all of these other conditions or circumstances have to be met in order for those in-person services to resume. It's not like flipping a switch and all of a sudden we're back to normal and in-person services again. We would all love that, but I think everyone understands during this COVID-19 pandemic, that's just it's not reasonable to expect that.
So Wanda and Darcy, if what we see right now is probably overwhelming are still doing virtual and not in person, and let's say a parent or a provider out there that's watching says, look, we've been taking care of this kid, Johnny, and you're hypothetical, up until March in person. Now we've been doing virtual. It's been over 3 months. They need additional help. Is there additional services out there that they can get? Like the woman I just saw before I came here that said, look, we're doing in person couple hours a week on the phone. It's not doing the job. What kind of resources are available to that mom or dad or the provider? Like, what can we offer? Would it be more time, or what type of things are available?
They can always go back and ask for a change of the IEP. Again, I'm talking special education services, not even early intervention at this point, because June 5th and June 8th were only about special education services.
Okay.
So they can always request that from the school district. So either the Committee on Special Education for School-Age Children, ages 5 and above, or the CPSE, Committee on Preschool Special Education, which are ages 3 to 5. So
Okay.
they can always go back and request a special program review meeting and talk about the barriers that they're running into with the distance learning service, and the whole committee can come together and try and resolve those barriers so that child can benefit educationally from those services. However, with this guidance that is now out and issued, there is the opportunity for the CPSE or CSE, depending on which level and the age of the student, to come together and say, speech might be okay in person, but maybe OT is not able to be provided, occupational therapy, is not appropriate. And those are the communications that Committee on Special Education overseen by the school district can come together and resolve for a special education child.
And if there's a
student.
parent watching right now and saying, look, I'm having problems, they can, and I know they can call their school districts.
Mm-hmm.
They can call us too, so they can talk to you, Wanda, your office, or Darcy or me, saying, look, I'm having a problem, getting this message to my school district. And we had a conference call with the school districts before we've done this today, and just a way to help them, facilitate them through the process. Look, we have a parent that called, their kid's not getting everything that they think they need some extra help. We can advocate on behalf of that individual as the county to that school district to try to get them hopefully more services or a better situation.
They can also call 311. 311, is our Orange County call center, and it oversees services for people with developmental disabilities, mental illness, and/or substance abuse. That's the main core of what 311 was established for, and they can help to assist with connecting them to services, whether it's a school advocate that the family needs to assist them, whether it's one of our departments that they need to connect with. I mean, at this point, you're right, we're looking at 3 months where we haven't had face-to-face. And for general education students, that's been difficult, and for their parents, they haven't learned, it feels, in the same way they would if they were face-to-face. Not to mention, we don't have that social emotional experience as part of it. There's so much that's missing when you do virtual. And I am afraid to say that we're looking at least the rest of the summer, most likely, that we're going to continue with virtual with all of the programs that Dr. McQueen just listed. We're trying to get back in September. I think that when June 5th came out from the governor, the schools and the preschool programming were all looking at how do we do reopen plans for September. That kind of threw them for a loop, right? And they just they weren't ready. I think safety-wise, equipment-wise, planning wise, whether it's transportation, whether it's teachers, whether it's how do you, have kids, be social distancing in safe ways. So, it's hard to say that we're probably looking at the summer before we'll have more face to face, but we're hopeful for September that we can be there at that time. For parents, I think their greatest fear likely is my child is going to lose some of the progress that they've made. They were doing really well in speech and they were doing really well physically. And now, without having that daily intervention that they had, they're losing some of their skills. And parents feel really responsible to try to help their child maintain, to progress. And that's an emotional piece that's really hard for everybody. I think this pandemic has taken a toll in so many ways, but this is another way it's taken a toll.
I think if we could offer to the public, if they're not sure, and this is confusing, I'm not an expert at this. You guys live this, and it's a labyrinth to deal with yourself. There's so many regulations and executive orders and what they mean, what they don't mean. But if we have parents that are watching and providers, or, if you have questions, feel free to message us, or like you said, call 311. We'll have somebody call you back. Do you guys want to we had some people that asked questions online ahead of time, so it's going to be like speed dating. If you know the answer, fine. If you don't know the answer, don't worry about it. I'm just going to give first names. I'm not going to give people's last names that put the questions out. When will Social Security offices reopen?
Well, Social Security offices are federal, and so I don't know the answer to that. I would have to look to see when they're planning to reopen. I apologize.
That's why I actually didn't want to ask the question anyway, but somebody asked it, and my staff said that we would know.
Understood.
Why we wouldn't, I don't know. Will group early intervention services such as GDM, PCG be opening with the rest of in-person services?
That's the answer to that is no. We hadn't got to that piece yet on early intervention. I've been focused on special education, but in regards to the early intervention program, we're currently working to provide some local guidance about resuming in-person services. That being said, we just received guidance for the 0 to 3. Early intervention program is 0 to 3. We received that on June 18th, so that just came out right before the weekend. I think part of that sparked this wonderful conversation we're having today, because there's a lot of questions surrounding that and what that might look like. And that's really a local decision to make, so that's going to be made at the county level when we're resuming. We're working on those plans, but I can't speak to the potential dates that we're talking about because they're not finalized or approved by our Commissioner of Health at this time. So I won't be able to offer that today, so I apologize.
But at least they're in the works as opposed to...
They are in the works. And the guidance that came out on June 18th, it actually said that individual services could be provided in person under certain circumstances. However, the New York State Department of Health continues to recommend that we use telehealth services, which is similar distance learning or virtual on the preschool side, telehealth services as they're called in the early intervention world, to the maximum extent possible at this time. So our guidance through the county is always aligned with the state or federal guidance that we receive. So I can tell you for sure that if and when we get the directives out in regards to in-person services resuming, it will be on a limited basis.
Because of that recommendation.
Because of the recommendation, we will always be in accordance with the state and federal guidelines. It will be limited to individual services only, as per those state and federal guidelines. And that means group services, which include parent-child group, that's the PCG, and the group developmental model, which is the GDM. They are not allowed to open at this time. That is in the state guidance from DOH on June 18th. Group services cannot resume at this time. It is not a county decision. I'm getting a lot of requests. Wanda, what are you doing? I've got a mom that we've been trying to work services through with a very significantly delayed, medically frail 0 to 3 child in the early intervention program right now. Been working with her since the onset of this. Telehealth does not work for her child in this instance. So he's basically been going without services. It's heartbreaking. I mean, you can all put yourself in that position as a parent. What would I be doing? And even though the early intervention program is about teaching strategies to the parent to use with the child. Just think about a child where you're already, you have maybe multiple children in your home. Now you have a medically frail child, so you have a medical issue in the home. You're dealing with that. And then you have significant developmental delays. And all you're getting are virtual services where a provider for speech or OT or something else is now coming in through video and audio for a few sessions a week, guiding you on what you can do, but they can't be there for a medically frail child, like for PT or OT, for those motor difficulties. They can't be there showing you and guiding you. And so for a parent, this can become very overwhelming, especially if you have
One
a
of the
kid with
parents
complex needs.
said it like, how is teletherapy going to help kids that are regressing? And I think that's what you mentioned. If 3 months of not having face to face, you could start going backwards. And now telehealth still doesn't give you that physical
It
face to
doesn't.
face.
It doesn't. And telehealth isn't new. Telehealth has been in place, just like distance learning services for special education has been in place since the governor's order to close services in March. So it hasn't been that services weren't available. They just shifted virtual services only for this period of time. And telehealth for early intervention and for special education can be very beneficial. And we have heard those great stories too, where they are continuing to do a great job. They're seeing the students or children progress very well, and they're working very well. Telehealth has, and if the Commissioner of Health, Dr. Gelman, will tell you, she's a proponent of telehealth, because for certain circumstances, it's very beneficial.
And with the uncertainty of where we are now, I mean, what people bring up great comments, and Wanda, you brought this up too. A lot of these rules aren't our rules. We have to live by them.
Right.
Like people said, why are summer camps allowed and now not the group setting and not one-on-one? It's a great comment. Again, not our rules, but I have to believe with people, the comments of getting here, a lot of parents are really concerned about this, that it's not cutting it. So I have to believe that there's going to have to be something coming down from Albany to allow some of these especially in at least in extreme circumstances where you say people, physically just not working with the virtual.
And the good news is, unfortunately, I can't give somebody a definitive date or answer of when in-person services for early intervention or preschool special education will resume. I cannot do that because there's too many unknowns. I can tell you for the 0 to 3, there is going to be an option for those extreme cases where telehealth does not work for a given child. There are going to be options for in-person services very soon. But I can't say give you a date or anything at this time.
But we can get some of these people teed up. Like there's a lot of parents on here saying, like this one lady said, I have a 19-month-old who has regressed and isn't walking yet. The OT and speech because of the telehealth just isn't cutting it. PT has been super hard. Can we get an answer when we can get therapists will return in person? We're not sure when, but maybe we can get this young lady and her 19-year-old teed up. So to say, look, we have a special request. This has been there's been requests for the business sector for certain businesses to be able to operate even though they shouldn't have been, and there was a mechanism in Albany to do that. We maybe advocate, and I'll be on the call with the governor's office this afternoon. We need to have that caveat or that so we can connect people to get these people the questions they have, the services they need.
I think Dr. McQueen's saying we're on the cusp, and which is exciting. I mean, I would say for mental health services and substance abuse services, we've been using telehealth and audio, using telephonic as well. But when we have somebody in crisis in the community, our mobile response team is still going out. When we have a child protective service report, we're still going out. We're asking the questions, the screening questions. We're using PPE. You're going in. There are some people that just cannot respond to those telephonic and telehealth resources. So we have to go face to face. And I think you're saying you're getting close to that for the early
remember the
intervention.
guidance that even that the New York State Department of Health came out with was June 18th.
That's right.
It is the 23rd, so it came out Thursday night. I didn't even read it until after midnight, I don't think. And then Friday, you got to start digesting it and my early intervention program supervisor, Carol Abenanti, who is, is very in tune with the needs of our families and the families that we serve through the early intervention program. We both had a conversation on Friday that we needed to take the weekend to digest it and start letting the processes work through and thinking through these things, because it's not something where you can flip a light switch and it comes out Thursday night and Monday morning we say, yeah, providers, if you want, go ahead back into the homes and in person. We could not do that. Our Commissioner of Health, Dr. Gelman, I'm sure would not be happy with us if we had done something like that without her approval. So we need to make sure that we can do it in a timely manner, but then we have to ensure the health and safety of not only our families, but our providers and other community members. We don't want to trigger the phases going the opposite direction right now in Orange County. So we have to ensure that we're taking care of the COVID-19 aspect of this as we bring it back in. And then there's different protocols that have to be in place that weren't in place already based on the guidance we got out of the New York State Department of Health, and that we follow those.
It's funny, I got two county executives have been messaging me, one from Dutchess, Mark Molinaro, one Dan McCoy from Albany. He's dealing with the same situations. I have to tell you, I'm not going to give last names, but another mom contacted me as we're sitting here, as I'm talking, and I have a list of questions that were pre-asked, but these are great points. Can early intervention sessions be allowed in offices and centers that are following CDC guidelines? It's challenging for guidelines to be followed, such as temperatures and things like that. I agree. I mean, today, phase 3, you can go into a restaurant, you can have gatherings of 25. But if your kid needs that extra help to sit across from a professional, so we'll continue to push for that. Let's jump into some of these questions, continue to go on these so we can continue to answer and advocate. Whose decision is it to have school open or not? I think we have that, right? The state is saying that. Is it done at a county level or a local level? No. The school, as far as schools be open, no. But in order some of these
the
services,
school district in general,
Yeah.
Right now that's still at the state level.
But the services that you said
Special education services, the governor issued that order from the
let's flush
state.
into that a little bit.
New York State Education Department has not issued guidance in support of the executive order that's outside of the June 8th guidance that came out of Department of Health. They did work with the Department of Education, but in speaking with our preschool Orange County providers over the last couple of weeks since it was issued on June 8th, they're telling me many of them are uncomfortable resuming in-person services until they get more official guidance directly from the Department of Education. I found the Department of Health guidance, the advisory on June 8th, in regards to preschool special education. I found it to be very thorough and very well thought through, and so did many of our providers. So related service providers, those that offer individual services like speech, OT, PT, out in the educational setting, or even possibly in the family's home when a child doesn't attend an educational setting like a daycare or a preschool. Several of them have already communicated with me that they're putting safeguards in place, and they will be willing and able to offer in-person services this summer should a school district request them from them. But that's, again, you got to have those two pieces for special education. The district first has to request in-person services. The provider then has to accept or say they are able to provide them. And we're not, at the county, we certainly are not going to encourage a provider or one of our special education center-based programs to open their doors until they are comfortable that they can meet all the safeguards, because the health and safety is most important.
What if we have many school districts in Orange County? One person made a comment, I think he's talking about, why can't Orange Ulster BOCES open to do services for people? So all the school districts are a part of that whole family of Orange Ulster BOCES. Is there a way, or is that a request we can make and say, look, the people that need the extra help from each school district, can we funnel them through Orange Ulster BOCES, give them that care? Is that an option, or is that something we should be advocating for?
I think we had a conference call earlier with BOCES in preparation of today's meeting to make sure we're giving accurate school age information out, since the county has no role in special education for school age children. Darcy, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I would just say, I had multiple conversations, and we've stayed in touch with BOCES. BOCES is our liaison to the superintendents across the districts. We partner with BOCES on many projects in the county and appreciate them. In our conversation, I had 2 conversations yesterday. I had one today with Bill Hecht, our superintendent of Orange Ulster BOCES. And, they really were working on their September return plan when this executive order came out. There are specifics within the order, and it's not my place to speak on behalf of them or any of our places to speak on behalf of them, but we can appreciate the challenge that presented for them because it shifted from a New York State decision that they weren't able to provide that service to a local district decision. They've looked across the Hudson Valley region. They've looked at our numbers here in Orange County, and across the Hudson Valley region, the BOCES have decided to continue extended school year with virtual supports.
For school age.
For school age.
Yes.
And they really tried to ramp up what they've done through from March until June, using some additional technology to do tactile sessions. They sent, kids home with all their families. My understanding is our BOCES reached out to every one of their families who were registered for extended school year and have communicated with them. And some families, as Dr. McQueen said, were relieved because they were concerned and didn't want their child to go back to face-to-face. And others were very upset because they're worried about the progress their child has made. So we have the gamut. Most importantly, I hear the compassion in what they're bringing forward. I hear their hard work in advocating to be open in September. And we still don't know, right? I mean,
It's
none of us are
frustrating.
here.
Let me tell you, the comments are great because they're all parents like us.
Yeah.
We all, you said you were a mom too. And I know Darcy and her husband James have children like I do. Nobody knows when school's opening. And one of the next question is, if we go back to school in September, but kids have to wear masks, what happens to children like mine who cannot tolerate wearing them due to sensory sensitivities?
Yeah, most everything that I've seen, says that it's most important for the staff to wear the masks, for you to try to attempt social distancing, attempt to have students wear masks, but acknowledging, even kindergartners, they're not the most cooperative all the time, and wearing a mask might not be something to do consistently. So schools have to take that into consideration when they make decisions. But when we're dealing with a special needs population, there's even those who are so much special masked, right? Because they need to be able to see lips move in order
Right.
for them to be able to communicate, and masks don't allow for that to happen. So masks are not ideal,
And they are
especially for
making
young
new
people.
masks.
They do
that-
make clear
yeah.
mask. I just sent
They're hard
out
to get,
some
yeah.
information. Restaurant Depot is carrying face mask shields that are clear right now. So I let my providers know that had voiced to me
Yeah.
that they may be willing to provide in-person services this summer if they could get the right equipment. And certainly speech providers, those working with children who have hearing issues, you need to be able to have they have to be able to see your face to work with them. So I sent out that resource to them along with some others that I found online because they are available. So there are clear masks out there. And in regards to masks in the fall, in that question specifically, I can't speak to school age general education, but the guidance on June 8th for all special education, school age and preschool, clearly indicates that masks are required for staff whenever they're within 6 feet of a student. However, they're highly encouraged for the special education student. They're not required. And that's, that again, a mixed bag. Some are glad to hear that, and others are concerned when we're talking about providers.
Is there any hope for pre-K early intervention summer school programs to happen at all this summer?
Well,
Again,
Scale
these
of
are
1
great
to
questions.
10?
Yeah. Huh?
Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolutely.
You would give it a 2% chance that they.
I'd give it a 2.
Are you talking about, and it's hard
just
to
a
tell,
question they just told me, yeah.
when they say programs, a lot of times I think of a center-based program.
Well, that's what they said.
Yeah.
If not, is there any hope to have out-of-district summer school programs? Another great example. That's just saying. If we can't get it done here, is there somewhere else, another avenue for us to get that program? And it looks like it's going to
There's
be a
no
universal
other
no.
avenue for preschool special education to get a center-based
For
program.
they're saying going to another county like pre-K maybe in Rockland, but they're all in the same
They're
boat
all
as
the
us.
They're-
same. That's
We
right.
Okay.
we actually contract for preschool special education services for center-based programs with several out-of-county providers. And I can tell you right now, I do not have one that's responded to me. And I'm asked this question since June 5th and June 8th came out for special education for preschool. I've asked providers, I said, would you be willing, if requested by a district, to provide in-person services this summer? And there has only been one center-based program that has said to date. Now,
Yeah.
we don't have all the information; it's not finalized. But to date, there is only one center-based program that is willing and planning to open for the summer term, which begins in July. And that one is within Orange County. It's not outside. I have not heard
Yeah.
any out of county that are. As a matter of fact, the out of county programs, center-based programs I've heard from that we contract with currently for preschool special education, have said they are not planning to reopen in-person services and will continue with distance learning services for the summer.
I think let's just keep. This might have been answered already. I'm going to go through this because there's a lot of great comments on here, a lot of camaraderie on here. Every parent, regardless of what their child needs, they're all like we're in this together, which is great. Will there be group sessions with school-age children for speech therapy? And if so, do we even know the guidelines?
I would think they should contact their school district. And the key there is you can do a virtual session that's a group session where you can bring students together. So
And some
it's
programs are
possible,
doing that.
right, to do it that way. But currently, we school age, to our understanding, extended year is not going to happen face-to-face this year in Orange County.
Okay. Let's just keep moving on here, and then we'll get some comments. I'd like to get everybody together, the parents that are commenting on here, and start advocating individually. Like, so one might have a speech therapy issue, one might have some type of other type of thing they're advocating. Please discuss plans for developmental disabled residents who are stuck in group homes that are still in lockdown as we enter phase 3. Do we know if they can do more?
Well, I'm very thankful to be able to say, first of all, it's been a challenge in residence. Anytime where there's congregate living, right, we've had grave concern. Dr. Galman, we've appreciated the special attention she's given to those congregate homes and ensuring that they have what they need to try to keep the residents safe. But families haven't been able to visit up until, 10 days
Right.
ago. So the fact they're able to visit their loved one now is wonderful. They have to follow all of the social distancing, mask, hand washing rules, but they are able to visit. But there are things like programs where they did, work without walls, where they went around and they went as a group to visit different work sites. Those kind of activities
They're
are
still
slower
stuck.
in coming back online,
Okay.
right? And so again, all of it has to do with what's safe. We're in phase 3. If you can go in a restaurant and stay 6 feet away, it's. I hear families saying, let's move everything along with it. So we're waiting for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities to respond and give that direction.
And I keep getting a lot of repeat. Obviously, everybody's in a similar boat here. If school isn't open in September, how will our kids receive their therapies, OP, PT speech, provided by the school? We talked a little bit about that. And it says, like, it's not work for autistic kids, virtual schools does not provide the support that they need. And I think we agree with that. I think we're going to have to find some type of solution. I mean, with or without the state. If we don't get guidance from the state, we're going to have to figure out something. I
Well,
think
I think
to
it's
help.
important to note that right now, and this is fairly new, so a lot of these comments, I know people are coming off from March to June kind of anxiety from this
And their
because
parents,
they've
like,
been closed
they're
in
not
and they can't
specialty
do,
people,
and they
too.
haven't been able to do anything up to this point.
Yeah.
What I think people need to also understand, the families, that the providers also have families that they're worried about. Their own providers have their own families, their own health, their own issues. So they are being very cautious stepping back into this. And this executive order coming on June 5th, 3 weeks before the summer term would even begin. That's not giving them much of a heads up. And that came with no guidance until June 8th on Monday. And then it's not direct guidance from Department of Education. So I think we're already on the verge and we're on the path to resuming in-person services. I would caution people from focusing too much on fall right now because this, if
We still got a
anybody who's
couple
been on this ride since March knows this is changing every day. We're working on, when we get information today, it's really last week's data because tomorrow something new is going to come down the pike and that can change the whole ball of wax. So I think that's important to remember that moving forward. We are on the path to resuming in-person services. I think it's going to be a gradual increase. We're starting with special education services right now in the world of education, and those services could potentially resume this summer. In the case of preschool special education, I do have providers, including one center-based program, who are willing and offering preschool special education services this summer. I have heard from school districts. Not all of them have made that determination yet because it's a very important decision to make. But I have not heard from all districts yet, but some of them are saying yes, they are going to request all CPSC services, preschool special education services, resume this summer. Will the providers be available to offer them? We don't know. There's going to be some issues where I believe where a school district may request a service and then there's not a provider to offer it in person. Virtual will remain in place for those. Will it resolve the issues for all children, especially our most in need complex children, like those with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, or those that are medically frail and have a multitude of significant disabilities that affect their learning? No, this is not going to work for everyone because it's going to be a slow start. But we know we have issues and barriers to overcome. At least now we have the opportunity to overcome them. And I can't tell you anybody more committed on the 0 to 3 side than Carol Abernathy in my division overseeing the early intervention program to resuming those services as safely and as concisely as possible so that the needs of all of the children, and we serve about 5,000 students, 0 through 5, in our division each year through early intervention or preschool special education. It's quite a few kiddos.
I just had a comment from a young lady, Tiffany. I lost her comment. It was on here and it just got bounced because there's other comments. But one part of it was, are they going to reevaluate these individuals if they have regressed? Is there going to be an opportunity to reevaluate your child to say that they're different than they were 3 months ago?
Yeah.
They need extra help.
That is such a good question. I'm glad they brought that up because that tells you how far we've gone with this guidance. As in-person comes back on for 0 through 3 and 3 through 5, that has been a discussion at both the Department of Education level and the Department of Health level all the way up to the state. And I can tell you the Department of Education is saying it is up to that CPSE, so the School District's Committee on Preschool Special Education, to make sure when they're making requests for in-person services or other services to consider the child's current level of functioning and what their current needs are. And that will be the typical process that a CPSC would typically follow, probably a meeting or some kind of assessment.
What is going to happen? Let me just correct while I got her on here, before her comment keeps getting bounced from other people. What is going to happen to the children who are in early intervention and they're aging out but are now regressing due to not having direct services? Will that child be reevaluated? That was the question.
Oh,
So
for
she's
those
helping me
aging
out here,
out,
Tiffany.
that's a completely separate
Okay.
question. But in general, for children, just to finish, and then I'll make sure I don't forget the ones that are aging out question, because that's another great question. This person's really in tune with the pulse of what we're working on
There's
right
no
now.
better advocates
This
than
is
parents
great.
of kids with
Yeah, you
special
tell them
needs.
that in the early intervention program.
That's
Always
right.
has those best parents. But when you're talking about early intervention services in a reevaluation, we just had a state call with the Department of Health, Bureau of Early Intervention, just this past week, before they actually released the guidance saying in-person services might possibly resume for certain children in the early intervention program. And that guidance, she was very clear, the executive director of the Bureau of Early Intervention, when she told us that according to regulation for the early intervention program, children who go a specific time period without service, so it might have been a child that's significantly delayed, so telehealth was not appropriate. So they didn't get services from March when the governor closed services down, put the state on pause, to now. And now we're about to resume services. We're past that 3-month mark, though we do have to, in the early intervention program, make sure we comply with the regulation to reassess that child. Now, this parent, I want to assure her, we have had this discussion at the health department. We are not going to require that a child be deemed re-eligible for the program if during this COVID-19. So
if they age
oftentimes the regulation is there because if a child goes a certain amount of time with no services, we have to reevaluate them to deem that they're still eligible for the program. We are not going to be reassessing children to make them re-eligible. We're just not doing that. Families have been through enough.
Okay, good.
But we
There's
are
another
building-
parent that just bounced on here too. That's why they're advocating for each other. So another lady says her son is aging out and has to be reevaluated for the school district due to the virus. She was afraid that there would be a lapse in service, but she'll be covered.
Well, now you're talking about the aging out piece, so it's kind of skipping over to the next piece.
Okay.
So initially, an early intervention program child that hasn't received any services because maybe the telehealth was not appropriate during this time frame,
Yeah.
as we come back online in the early intervention program, so that child's still not aging out, they will not have to be deemed re-eligible for the program, but they will be reassessed so we understand what their
Okay.
current needs are and make sure that we give them the appropriate services that they need. So we're doing that moving forward. Now, when we're talking about that aging out question, that is very important, and some parts of it are not the best answer that we'd like to give at the county, but we don't get to make that determination. Typically, in the early intervention program, a child has to be evaluated by the Committee on Preschool Special Education prior to their 3rd birthday and deemed eligible in order to remain in early intervention until a given time frame after their 3rd birthday. Anyone born with a birth date turned 3 from January on right now, if they've been deemed eligible for preschool special education to go there after early intervention is over, parents have the option to stay in early intervention beyond their 3rd birthday all the way through up and through 8/31. Many children that would have been or had a scheduled evaluation when schools got put on pause by the state, they have been unable to get that initial eligibility determination by the school district for preschool special education services. The early intervention program, so the Bureau of Early Intervention through Department of Health, initially issued guidance because this is a federal decision to make, that the federal government, because early intervention is a federal program, extended the deadline not to the child's 3rd birthday, but all the way through June 30th, so through the school year. So all the way through June 30th. So as long as the evaluation's completed by then, even if the child turned 3 in April, they can remain in early intervention through June 30th. Now, beginning June 30th, there's nothing for 7-1. And on our call with the Bureau of Early Intervention the other day, we were told that it's a federal decision to make. It's been submitted to the Congress on the federal level.
That scares me.
To
have these guys
scared us
between
too.
Albany and Washington have to make these critical decisions.
Yes. And this is the state giving us this guidance, Department of Health. Just last week, she told us that Congress, it's on there, it's been presented to Congress, but we all know how things are going on the federal level, and timeliness is not their strong suit. Unless they do something, the state of New York will not be able to extend it beyond 6/30.
Okay.
My feeling is we won't be able to extend beyond 30. If you're in the so that means if you were in the early intervention program and your child's going to turn 3 before June 30th and not be able to complete the initial eligibility on the preschool special education level, they will no longer be eligible for early intervention program services after June 30th. We do have a meeting at a school district for a child on June 30th in the district. The chair was calling me, the CPSC chairperson was calling me saying, Wanda, is this too late? And no, it could be midnight on June 30th. They can continue in early intervention if you can determine them eligible. But on July 1st, a child without an initial eligibility determination for preschool special education will need to be exited from the early intervention program.
So my 2 takeaways for this is we're going to probably be doing this again in another week because of that timeline, because there's a lot of unanswered questions. And if I would be scared to, with these parents are asking great questions here, and depending on how old their child is, what could it depend if they get hung out to dry in some way or another?
Right. Now they would be eligible to get their evaluation when schools resume. Some of those standardized evaluations, school districts and the state are saying all components of the initial eligibility evaluation have to be completed for the school district to determine eligibility. Some of those to be standardized norm test have to be completed in person, and right now we haven't had that option. The good news is, the only good news is, I have spoken to our preschool special education evaluators that Orange County, again, contracts with. The majority of them are
Yeah.
willing to provide in-person evaluations beginning July,
So
when summer term resumes, so in accordance with the
I
governor's
know I'm
order.
a story stealer and butting in all the time, but
That's okay.
these questions appear and they keep getting bounced because there's a lot of questions
That's
here.
okay.
So this mom says the rule that she was told once the child hits 3, it becomes, now it's gone again, school district's problem. Is that still true? So the rule that she was once told was that the child hits 3 years old, it becomes the school district's problem. That was before COVID, though. Is that true? Not true?
Early intervention program regulation has always had that rule about
3.
when they turn 3. 3 is when you would transition to preschool special education services. Just so you know, any child prior to COVID in the early intervention program who is not deemed eligible for preschool special education by their 3rd birthday
Because
must
of,
exit the early intervention program on their 3rd birthday.
Okay.
So that's always, that's a regulation. It's not a county decision, and that's always been
My-
there. That hasn't changed. They made the extension because of COVID-19 to June 30th.
Okay. My takeaway, I have a call with the governor's office in 25 minutes, is from what these parents are saying and what your conversation. I was getting dressed this morning, I had News 12 on, and the advertisements were for hospitals and healthcare providers saying, hey, don't ignore your health. If you have this, that, and the other thing, call your doctor, blah, blah, blah. So, and I get that. There's 2 reasons. 1, they want you to be healthy, and 2, they're a business, they need to make money. So if I can go meet with my doctor right now, and I can get my teeth cleaned from my dentist, why can't these kids that need this, or young adults, get this care? That is my argument to the governor in 25 minutes from now, right? I mean, these parents are very impassioned here that their kids need help. They're worried about them regressing. They can get their nails done. Why can
They
this
get an
one lady
in-person
Kelly
evaluation.
says, yeah,
Well, I think, again, now that's able to be done should the school district request it. I say that because if you just remember, I spoke about June 30th in a school district CPSC chairperson saying, Wanda, we're doing these eval now, then we got to do this, then we got to go to the board. If we do this by June 30th, is he still good to stay in the early intervention program through 8/31, which is the typical date by regulation, has nothing to do with the current pandemic? And I said, absolutely. That's because one of those preschool special education evaluating agencies is willing and able, since the June 5th executive order and the June 8th guidance that came out by Department of Health in regards to special education, since that came out, now they're able to and they're willing to. So if the district requests it, which this district did, the evaluation for a child, and the provider's able to provide it, it can take place. So right now, I think we do have that avenue. That doesn't mean, I'm not trying to say every school district's able to do that and every provider's willing to offer evaluations. But I can tell you one of our agencies, which was one of our larger evaluation agencies, they are currently starting evaluations again right now.
Face to
in
face.
hopes.
good.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that being said, what precautions will be in place or required for therapists coming from a therapist for them to enter a child's home? You have no idea? Is that still undetermined?
Again, in the most of preschool special education services take place in an educational setting. Sometimes that is the child's home. The June 8th guidance document, and I know you have meetings. but
No,
the
that's right.
June-
No,
the
I want to
June-
keep. I know we were going to keep this to an hour. We're over an hour, but this important stuff, I'll keep it going, and then I'll just jump on my call with the governor's office.
Okay, the June 8th interim advisory included a lot of safeguards that have to be in place, and they stated they were the minimal safeguards to be put in
Right.
place. So I couldn't go over all of those. Certainly, you can. Anyone can access this document through the Department of Health. You can go to their website, and I left those websites with you in this. In if you want to share those
So
and get those out to
we'll
families.
share those websites, but I'd
Okay.
also like
But
the
for
mom and dads that are on here, even the providers, if
Sure.
they have a question. Some people are providers that are answering good questions.
Again, the
to
June 8th
message us.
the safeguard piece, the June 8th document Minimal requirements include, and I'm categorizing these, considering remote options to protect those at higher risk, maintaining social distancing of 6 feet or more, where appropriate. In some educational activities, it's just not appropriate to do so. Wearing a mask when social distancing is not possible. And again, this is a requirement for staff. Students are encouraged to wear masks. It does say for the one who said they have, you had someone who said they had difficulty, their child with sensitivity.
Yeah.
The June 8th document is clear that students are not required to wear masks if it impedes their medical or mental health and or makes it difficult or distracting for them to learn. So that leaves it up to between the provider and the family. So that's in relation to the mask. All providers will be required to be increasing their cleaning, disinfecting, ventilation. They're recommending windows open, doors open, those kinds of things. Again, this is the June 8th special education guidance. They have to adopt healthy hygiene practices, and there is a much more detailed information on the June 8th document. Limit sharing of personal items, identify signs and symptoms of COVID-19, plan for when an employee or provider may become sick. So would we just go back to distance learning? What would we do so the child doesn't go without services? Would someone else step in, like a substitute teacher, for example? Maintain operations that safeguard public health and safety. An example might be like we do at the health department. When you arrive in the morning, all staff get their temperature checked and answer those screening questions. It could be as simple as something like that. And we do that at the health department in most places. I just went to the dentist the other day and I had to sign an acknowledgement that being there might put me at higher risk. Some providers might even be implementing that, but that's left at the provider level to decide that. They have to have a plan. In regards to transportation safeguards, if they need to use the bus, we have routed all buses for summer. Should programs come back online and services be available, we will ensure that transportation can be provided, or parents have their transportation contracts being processed right now. And if and when they need it, we will reimburse them for that transportation should they provide it. Staggered seating on the buses is going to take place. Bus staff will be required to wear masks whenever there's students on the bus. Staff must sanitize their hands during bus runs. Bus staff, they're going to be required to do the daily pre-screening pieces, which will include temperature and pre-screening questions at a minimum. It could be additional things. Children will wear masks if able to tolerate them on the bus. The summer camps guidance, we were referred by DOE to use that in regards to transportation. That guidance does say that any child being transported should be wearing a mask. So that's why that piece was added there. Again, we don't just do these things because we do them. There's reasons we're adhering to state guidance on those. And certainly no sharing of items. We've always had that on the bus, but you shouldn't be sharing of items. And that being said, when you're talking about the 0 to 3 program and the home visits specifically, we will be requiring that they're provided via telehealth to the maximum extent possible. But there is going to be a piece very soon to allow a child in the early intervention program to resume in-person services if it's deemed appropriate by their IFSP team. So
I would like to, we're getting some comments from providers as well that say they want to give their input. I would love to put together a request based on input from the two of you and your staff, signed by me, maybe signed by the three of us, whatever, and I can push that up, run that up to pipeline based on some of these comments and from maybe conversations on people that are, left hanging right now, just to try to get some answers. Because I think what everybody's collectively saying is there's so many other things that are able to be done right now. This is not being able to done, and I think that there's a lot of providers.
We didn't have
reluctant as
permission
well.
to do it until Friday,
Okay,
and it's Tuesday, Wednesday.
but you think it's coming? You think it'll be coming?
Oh,
pretty
I know
quickly.
we're working on it now.
Yeah.
I'd be working on it right now if I wasn't here.
For 0 to 3, which I think is an
0 to
important
3.
point. And there are many parents, I'm sure, who have children who are school age, children who are preschool age. So there's different criteria for each of those different age groups. So I agree with you. I think to put the message out, what we're saying to providers and to our community, parents are eager. children need the services, which services can be provided safely, what needs to be in place to make that happen, and not just through the health department, your decision, which is solely for 0 to 3, but throughout the continuum up to 21.
Is there a COVID surcharge for any of these services? Do we know of yet? I know that people are getting charged
that I'm
stuff for
aware of.
hair cutting and dental visits some places.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of.
No.
Okay.
But I
Uh,
can tell you, we just held a virtual, because that guidance for preschool special education came out on June 5th and June 8th. We held a virtual preschool special education meeting with our contracted providers who had indicated to us that they'd be willing to offer in-person services this summer. So
Okay.
those providers, I had a conversation with them myself, and we talked through many of these things. Providers that aren't willing to offer in-person services and going to continue with distance learning for special education, we haven't met with them yet because right now we have to focus on the in-person
Okay.
piece. As far as early intervention, we just found out, again, Thursday night that we
Yeah.
were allowed to even begin resuming
guidance.
in-person services. So once we get the guidance, the local guidance, because that's our guidance to generate and develop, once that is finalized, then we will hold a virtual meeting with the early intervention program providers and review it all with them prior to
Releasing it.
us the start date for resuming in-person services for an early intervention program
What
child.
about people waiting for an answer from OPWDD? They're waiting for an answer.
Ooh, well, it depends on what the answer is. If they have any
the
question
questions,
about
yeah.
OPWDD and we can assist, call my office at 291-2600, and we will assist. We can communicate with OPWDD for them. Really depends on what they're waiting for. If they're waiting for eligibility determination, I mean, all of our services have been continued to be operated throughout this pandemic. Have many of them been done virtually? Absolutely, but nothing has been stalled. They're still providing them, so they can call. They can call me.
Okay. So we can wrap it up. I will put. You gave a bunch of links here, Wanda. We'll put
Yes.
these out.
Thank you.
I wanted to try to get to more questions, but we're blown. This lady says, my child is medically fragile. What if I don't want in-home evaluations and she needs transition to preschool services?
Then she should be contacting her school district, letting them know that, and working with them to resolve any issues regarding in-person evaluation in the school district. Then needs, according to NYSA, just last week in a phone call I had with them, it's a school district should be working with them to try and provide an evaluation that doesn't require in-person. However, the school district is required to complete all components of the initial eligibility determination. So it's not as easy as a school district wanting to or not wanting to. All school districts want to. I'm hearing this concern about getting children evaluated that are in the early intervention program before the third birthday or the June 30th deadline. I'm hearing that on a regular basis from the school districts. The special education programs are just as concerned as the parents. We're trying to work with them to be as flexible as we can, but we all have to adhere to the state guidelines,
Yeah.
and we can't change those. And New York State Education Department confirmed that we have to still meet those initial eligibility requirements that they have at the state level. So we can be as creative as possible to get that determination made. I can't say that it would be possible for all children that can't do in person at this time.
Okay.
They should be reaching out to their CPSC, their school district.
Darcy, any final comments?
Just that we're trying to be as supportive as we can. I think today we tried to shed some light on what we have control over and what we don't. Most importantly, continue to reach out. You said that they're collaborating together, camaraderie together. There's no better advocates than parents. They work so hard to get their children's needs met, and they support each other through that. So we encourage that, and we really want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So call 311. Call my office, call the Department of Health and Dr.
And message us.
Or message us.
Confidentially, you don't want to
Absolutely.
put your number
Absolutely.
out publicly on there.
Right.
One last follow-up for you. Follow-up question from the original question. What if my daughter was approved for speech and OT program but not approved for schooling? Due to the pandemic, she has regressed. Will she be able to be reevaluated?
I don't know if we're talking about early intervention, preschool, or school age. So
Okay. You know what I'll
can't
do? I
answer
will
that
ask
question.
her to message me, Tiffany. Just message me confidentially, and we'll send that over to Wanda to walk you through it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I appreciate everybody for being on. We'll be back maybe in a week or so when we have more information to put out. We have more guidance, or a week after that, whenever we
Sure.
get
We'll
that
certainly
guidance.
have more information, or should have, depending on what time of the week it is, more information regarding their early intervention program, because we're currently working on that right now, very actively. But I'd just like to say before we close out that it's very important for parents to understand that we're all part of the same team. We're all here, and everyone, and I know we have to adhere to guidelines, and it seems like a lot of bureaucracy at times. And what do you mean you got to follow the regulations? It doesn't work for my child, and I was a parent. I was there too. All I can say is Orange County, certainly through Darcy's offices, and then the health department, we are your friend in this. We are your partner in this. We are your advocate in this. There is no louder vocal group going from the county to the state level than coming right out of the health department and intervention services in regards to these special education in-person services and early intervention program services. We will continue to do that. A lot of what we've done, along with other counties, because we work with them as well, collaborate with them as well, they've joined that advocation, and that's what's led to a lot of what you're seeing happen right now.
And that's why
So
you have
I-
Albany and Dutchess County contacting us as we're doing this. So
Ex-
we're all
exactly.
we watch each other,
We
we
are
work
all
each other.
in this together, and we will get there. And unfortunately, it will not be good enough if things didn't go good during the school closure. But we certainly are working to resolve any barriers for families and ensure they get the services that they need for their children, for special education students that person is eligible for and that they need to make progress. We do not want anybody to regress. We certainly are not doing it to try and prevent services in any way. It would be much easier if we were just tomorrow we're able to flick the light switch and resume in-person services. So we're here for you. Reach out to us. Certainly reach out to my office. Those of you that are online and listening still, I know it's been a long conversation, so many might have checked out, but 360-6630, direct line to intervention services if you have a 0 to 5 child and you have concerns with their developmental or special education services.
And we'll post that on the subtitle for this video. And again, a lot of these things are coming down, directives from the federal and state government, or we're awaiting them. We don't have them yet. But if you have a kid or if you have a loved one that is regressing or you're not sure, I mean, I wouldn't have a clue as a parent what to do. Thank God, you know, I don't have to do my homeschooling. I do a little bit of homework and then I'm asked to not help. But you know, they if you have a question, a lot of them are these are great comments on here. But if you have a question specific to your kid or your loved one, message us confidentially. Call these numbers, and these are great comments here. I mean, we have 246 or 266 comments on here. We will get back. We will get back to you. One of us or one of our staff that knows the answer. We'll get back to you. And I appreciate everybody for listening. Again, Darcy and Wanda, appreciate your time today. We'll be back again. And thank you, folks, for listening. And that's all we got for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.